Good morning, hello and happy Sunday to you everyone. Coming to you live, this is your favorite reading personality on YouTube, Nicholas Toppin. Coming to you live from Doheny Mansion, built by the original Irish immigrants that first found oil here in Los Angeles. Reading to you today, House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski, the remastered full color edition. Let's dive into chapter 4. Faith, sir. As a matter of fact, I don't believe one half of it myself. Diedrich Knickerbocker. All right. In early June 1990, the Davisons flew to Seattle for a wedding. When they returned, something in the house had changed. Though they had only been away for 4 days, the change was enormous. It was not, however, obvious, like, for instance, a fire, a robbery, or an act of vandalism. Quite the contrary. The horror was atypical. No one could deny there had been an intrusion, but it was so odd no one knew how to respond. On one video, we see Nina Davison acting almost amused, while Karen simply draws both hands to her face as if she were about to pray. Their children, Chad and Daisy, just run through it, playing, giggling, completely oblivious to the deeper implications. What took place amounts to a strange spatial violation. Spatial, S-P-A-T-I-A-L, spatial violation, which has already been described in a number of ways, namely, surprisingly, unsettlingly, disturbing, but most of all, uncanny. In German, the word of uncanny is unheimlich, which Heidegger, in his book Sinn und Zeit, thought worthy of some consideration. This appears all to be in German. I am not going to attempt that for you. What I will do is I will read on here where it appears to be transcribed into English. In anxiety, one feels uncanny. Here, the peculiar indefinitiveness of that which disdain finds itself alongside in anxiety comes proximately to expression, the nothing and nowhere. But here, uncanniness also means not being at home. In our first indication of the phenomenal character of Destin's basic state, and in our clarification of the existential meaning of being in, as distinguished from the categorical signification of the insideness, being in was defined as residing alongside, being familiar with. This character of being in was then brought to view more concretely through the everyday publicness of the they, which brings tranquilized self-assurance, being at home with all its obviousness, into the average everydayness of disdain. On the other hand, as disdain falls, anxiety brings it back from its absorption in the world. Everyday familiarity collapses. I've been saying disdain. I believe that what actually is supposed to be is Dezen, D-A-S-E-N. Dezen has been individualized by the individualized as being in the world. Being in enters into an existential mode of the not at home. Nothing else is meant by our talk about uncanniness. Isn't that rather uncanny? Which only goes to prove the existence of crack back in the early 20th century. Certainly, this greaser must have gotten hung up on a pretty wicked rock habit to start spouting such nonsense. Crazier still, I've just now been wondering, something about this passage may have actually affected me, which I know doesn't exactly follow, especially since the world implies something in it really does sense. And you can come up here and take all the photos you want, it's all right. I'm just recording myself reading, that's all.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay. Crazier still, I've just now been wondering if something about this passage may have actually affected me, which I know doesn't exactly follow, especially since that would imply something in it really does make sense, and I just got finished calling it nonsense. I don't know. The point is, when I copied down the German a week ago, I was fine. Then last night I found the translation, and this morning when I went into work, I didn't feel at all myself. It's probably just a coincidence, that there's some kind of connection between my state of mind and the Davison record, or even a few arcane sentences on the existence peened by a former Nazi tweaking on who knows what. More than likely, it's something entirely else, the real root line in my already strange mood malfunctions, though I guess those are pretty recent too, rocking back and forth between wishful thinking and some private agony until the bar breaks. I've no fucking clue. That part's definitely true. These days, I'm an apprentice at a tattoo shop on Sunset. I answer phones, schedule consultations, and clean up. Any idiot can handle it. In fact, the job's reserved for idiots. This afternoon, though, how do I explain it? Something really off. I'm off. I can't fucking do a thing. I just keep staring at all the ink we have, that wild variety of color, everything from root beer, midnight blue, and coccinellina and mauve, light doe, lilac, South Sea green, maize, even pencil black, all lined up on these plastic caps like tiny transparent thimbles, needless too, my eyes catching on all those carefully preserved points. And we have hundreds, mostly gauge 12 sharps, many singles, though plenty in 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, even needle groups, even a 14 round shader. It depends on what you need. I don't know what I need, but for no apparent reason, I'm going terribly south. Nothing has happened, absolutely nothing, but I'm still having problems breathing. The air in the shop is admittedly thick with the steady smell of sweat. Isoprene alcohol, benzol, and all that solution for the ultrasonic cleaner. Even solder and flux, but that's not it either. Of course, no one notices. My boss, retinue of his friends. Some new inductee who's just put down 150 for rows. Keep up the chatter. Pretty loud chatter too, though never quite enough to drown out the most important sound of all, the single insistent buzz of an original J tattoo matching, logging yet another 100 stabs a minute into the dimple of some chunky ass. That's hilarious. I get a glass of water. I walk out into the hallway. That's a mistake. I should have stayed near people, the comfort of company and all that. Instead, I'm alone, running through a quick mental checklist. Food poisoning, stomach fine. Withdrawals, haven't been on GAC or ecstasy. Diet for several months. And while I don't smoke any pot, this morning, my usual ritual, I know THC doesn't create a lasting psychedelical dependencies. And then, out of the B fucking loo, everything gets substantially darker not pitch black, mind you, not even power failure, substantially darker, not pitch black, mind you, not even a power failure black. I apologize, I just read the same sentence twice, I believe. People are walking on the grass, even though it clearly says not to walk on the grass. Get the fuck off the grass! I apologize. It depends on what you need. I don't know. Oh, okay, they were going through a checklist. Let's get back to where we were. No clouds. It's a bright day anyway. I'm inside. I wish that had been all. Just a slight decrease in illumination and a little breathing difficulty. Could still blame that on a blown fuse or some adherent drug-related flashback. But then my nostrils flare with the scent of something bitter and foul, something inhumane, reeking with so much rot, and years telling me in the language of nausea that I'm not alone. Something behind me. Of course, I deny it. It's impossible to deny it. I want to puke. To get a better idea, try this. Focus on these words, and whatever you do, don't let your eyes wander past the perimeter of this page. Now imagine you beyond your peripheral vision, maybe behind you, maybe to the side of you, maybe even in front of you, but right where you can't see it. Something is quietly closing in on you, so quiet in fact you can only hear it as a silence. Find those pockets without sound. That's where it is. Right at that moment. Don't look. Keep your eyes here. Now, take a deep breath. Go ahead, take even a deeper breath. Only this time, as you start to exhale, try to imagine how fast it will happen, how hard it's going to hit you, how many times it will stab your jugular with its teeth. Or are they nails? Don't worry. That particular detail doesn't matter. Because before you have time to even process that you should be moving, you should be running. You should, at the very least, be flinging up your arms. At the end, as hell, should be getting rid of this book. You won't have time to even scream. Don't look. I don't. Of course, I looked. I looked so fucking fast, I should have ended wearing one of those neck braces for whiplash. My hands had gone all clammy. My face was burning up. Who knows how much adrenaline had just dumped into my system. Before I turned, it felt exactly as if, in fact, I had turned at the instant, caught sight of some tremendous beast, crouched off in the shadows, muscles a twitch from the muscles a twitch from the firing, its great mass forward, rage claws slowly extending, digging into the aluminum, even as its eyes are dilating beyond the point of reason, completely obliterating this iris, and by the wildering fire, the glowing furnace of witness, a camera, Lucinda, with me in silhouette, like some silly hand shadow twitching about upside down. Is that right? Or am I getting confused? Either way, registering at last the sign it must have been waiting for. My own recognition of exactly what has been awaiting me all along, except that when I finally do turn, jerking around like a scared shit for brains, I discovered only a deserted corridor. Or was it merely a recently deserted corridor? This thing, whatever it had been, obviously beyond the grasp of my imagination, or for that matter, my emotions. Having departed into alcoves of darkness, sleeping into corners and floors, cracks and outlets, gone even to the walls, lights now normal, the smell, history, this smell, history. That doesn't seem right. The smell, history, okay. Though my fingers still tremble and I've yet to stop choking on large, irregular gulps of air, as I keep spinning around like a stupid top, spinning around on top of nothing, looking everywhere, even though there's absolutely nothing anywhere. I actually thought I was going to fall. And then, just as abruptly as I'd been possessed by this fear, I fell back onto control. When I re-entered the shop, things are still askew, but they at least seem manageable. The phone has been ringing 9 times. Nine times and counting, my boss announces he's clearly annoyed. More annoyed than I express some surprise over his ability to count that high. I pick up before he can start yammering at me about my attitude. The call's for me. Lude's on a payphone in the valley with important info. Apparently there's some significant doings at some significant club. He tells me he can guest list my boss and any cohorts I deemed worthy. Sure, I say, but I'm just still shaken and quickly lose hold of the details when I realize I've just forgotten something else as well, something very important, which by the time I hang up, no matter how hard I try, I can no longer remember what I meant to remember when whatever it was had first entered my head. Or had it? Maybe it hadn't entered my head at all. Maybe it had just brushed past me like someone. You can take all the photos you want. I'm just recording myself reading.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Take a look.
Yeah. I thought there was a road.
Okay. Maybe it hadn't entered my head at all. Maybe it had just brushed past me, like someone easing by in a dark room, my face lost in shadow. Nevertheless, regardless of how extensive his analysis... Oh wait, I apologize. Carrying on from where that ended. The face lost in the shadow. Okay. My thoughts lost in another conversation, though something in her moment or perfume is distinguishably familiar, though how familiar is impossible to tell, because the time I realize she's someone I should know, she's already gone, deep into the din, beyond the bar, taking with her any chance of recognition. Though she hasn't left, she's still there, embracing shadows. That's a good line, I like that. She's away, embracing shadows. Is that it? Had I been thinking of a woman? I don't know. I hope it doesn't matter. I have a terrifying feeling it does. Neatly translated as to who, which I happen to find is the poem Orpheus, Hermes, a book called The Selected Poetry of Rainer Reich, edited and translated by Stephen McKill, 1989. There you go. Nevertheless, regardless of how extensive his analysis is here, Hedgener still fails to point out the ultimatum, when used as an adverb, means dreadfully awful, heaps of, and an awful lot of. Largeness has always been a condition of the weird and unsafe. It is overwhelmingly too much or too big. Thus, that which is uncanny or unhelped, unhelped, unhelped. The fucking sun's burning my face. Hang on, I'm gonna switch positions. Switching positions, switching positions, switching positions. Oh, yeah. Unhelched is neither homely nor protective, nor comforting nor familiar. It is alien, exposed, and unsettled. Or, in other words, the perfect description of the house on Ash Tree Lane. In their absence, the Davisons' home had become something else, and while not exactly sinister or even threatening, a change still destroyed any sense of security or well-being. Upstairs in the master bedroom, we discover, along with Will and Karen, a plain white door with a glass knob. It does not, however, open into the children's room, but into a space resembling a walk-in closet. However, unlike the closet in the house, this one lacks outlets, sockets, switches, shelves, a rod on which to hang things, or even some decorative molding. Instead, the walls are perfectly smooth and almost pure black. Almost, because there is a significantly grey quality to the surface. The space cannot be more than 5 feet wide and at most 4 feet long. On the opposite end, the second door, identical to the first one, opens up into the children's bedroom. The Davison immediately asks whether or not they overlooked the room. This seems ridiculous at first until one considers how the impact of such an implausible piece of reality could force anyone to question their own perceptions. Karen, however, manages to dig up some photos which clearly show a bedroom wall without a door. The next question is whether or not someone could have broken in and in 4 days constructed a peculiar addition, plausible to say the least. Their final thought is that someone came in and uncovered it, just installed 2 doors, but why? And for the matter, to quote Reich Weir, the Davison does check his high 8s, but discovers that the motion sensors were never triggered. Only their exit and re-entrance exits were on tape. Virtually a week seamlessly idled, showing us the family as they depart from the house with the strange interior space present, only to return a fraction of a second later to find it already in place, almost as if it had been there all along. Okay, well, that's scary. Since the discovery occurred in the evening, the Davisons' inquiry must wait until the morning, and so while Chad and Daisy sleep, we watch Karen and Will suffer through a restless night. Hillary, their 1-year-old Siberian Husky, and Mallory, their tabby cat, lie on either side of the 24-inch Sony television, unperturbed by the new closet or the flickering from the tube or the drone from the speakers. Letterman, new revelations regarding the Iran-Contra affairs, reruns the traffic of information, assuring everyone that the rest of the world is still out there, continuing on the usual. Even if 2 new doors stand open, providing a view across the new space of darkness, from the parents' room to the children's room, where a tiny nightlight of the Starship Enterprise burns like some North Star. It is a beautiful shot. In fact, the composition and elegant balance of the colors, not to mention the lush contrast of lights, darkness, are so exquisite they temporarily distract us from the questions concerning the house or the events unfolding there. It seems a perfect example of Davison's unparalleled talent and illustrates why few, if any, could have accomplished what he did, especially towards the end. The following day, both Karen and Will pursue the most rational course. They acquire architectural blueprints from their local real estate office As might have been expected, these blueprints are not actual building plans, but were drawn up in 1981 when the former owner sought permission from the town's zoning board to construct an ale. The ale, however, was ultimately never built, as the owners soon sold the property, claiming they needed something a little smaller. Though the designs, as they appear on the screen, do not show a room or closet, they do confirm the existence of a strange crawl space, roughly 4 feet wide, running between both bedrooms. Alicia Rosenbaum, the real estate agent responsible for selling the Davison house, gives the camera a bewildered shrug when Karen asks if she has any idea who could be responsible for this outrage. Unable to say anything useful, Miss Rosenbaum finally asks if they want to call the police, which, amusingly enough, they do. That afternoon, 2 officers arrive, examine the closet, and try to hide the fact that this has to be the weirdest call they've ever made. As Sheriff Oxnard says, "We'll file a report, but other than that, well, I don't know what more we can do. Better, I guess, that had been a victim of a crazy carpenter than a robbery. Better to have been the victim of a crazy carpenter than that of a robber." There we go. Which even strikes Karen and Davison as a little funny. With all obvious options exhausted, and Davison returns to the building plans. At first they seem pretty innocent until he gets out a measuring tape. Idly at first he starts comparing the dimensions indicated in the plans with those he personally takes. Very soon he realizes not everything adds up. Something, in fact, is very wrong. Now Davison repeatedly tacks back and forth from his 25-foot Stanley power lock to the cold plunge pages spread out on his bed. He then finally mutters aloud, "This better be a case of bad math." An incorrigious cut presented us with the title card, 1/4 inch. Outside the house, and Davison climbs up the ladder to the 2nd story. Not an easy ascent, but he casually confesses to us, explaining how a troublesome skin condition he had since childhood had recently begun to flare up around his toes. Wincing slightly at what we can assume is at least moderate pain, he reaches the top rung where, using a 100-foot Empire flabberglass tape with a hand crank, he proceeds to measure the distance from the far end of the master bedroom to the far end of the children's bedroom. The total comes to 32 feet 9 inches and 3/4, which the house plans collaborate plus or minus an inch. The puzzling part... You can go ahead, it's alright, I'm just recording myself reading, but yeah, it's a nice view, that's all.
We thought that we can walk there.
Oh yeah, no. That's the top. Hasta luego. He carefully notes the length of the new area, the length of the both bedrooms, and the factors in the width of all the walls. The result is anything but comforting. In fact, it is impossible. 32 feet and 10 inches exactly. The width of the house inside would appear to exceed the width of the house as measured from the outside by 1/4 inch. Certain that he has miscalculated, and Davison drills through the outer walls to measure their width precisely. Finally, with Karen's help, he fastens the end of some fishing line to the edge of the outer wall, runs it through the drill hole, and stretches it across the master bedroom, the new space, the children's bedroom, and then runs it through the hole drilled through the opposite wall. He double checks his work, makes sure the line is straight, level and taut, and then marks it. The measurement is still the same, 32 feet and 10 inches exactly. Using the same line, and Davison goes outside, stretches the fishing line from one side of the house to the other, and finds it 1/4 of an inch too long, exactly. The impossible is one thing when considered as a purely intellectual conceit. After all, it is not so large a problem when one can puzzle over an Escher print and then close the book. It is quite another thing when one faces a physical reality, and reality the mind and body cannot accept. Karen refuses the knowledge. A reluctant Eve who prefers tangerines and apples. I don't care, she tells him Davison. Stop drilling holes in my walls. Undeterred, and Davison continues his quest, even though repeated attempts at measuring the house continue to reveal the quarter-inch anomaly. Karen gets quieter and quieter, and Davison's mood darkens, and responding like finely tuned weather vanes, the children react to the change in the parental weather by hiding it in other parts of the house. How you doing? You can go ahead. It's a beautiful view. You know, you can take photos. Here we go. It reflects the mood. Stop shooting dogs in my house. Frustrations edge into Davison's voice no matter how hard he tries. And Davison tries 6 consecutive times in 6 consecutive segments. He cannot slaughter that tiny sliver of space. Another night passes, and that quarter of an inch still survives. Where narratives in the film and fiction often rely on virtually immediate reactions, reality is far more insistent and indefiantly literal, more patient. Just as insidious poisons in the water table can take years before the effects are felt, the consequences of the impossible are likewise not so instantly apparent. Morning means orange juice. The New York Times, NPR, a squabble over the children's right to eat sugar cereal. The dishwasher moans, the toaster pops. We watch Karen scale the classifieds as Davison toys with his coffee. He adds sugar, milk, stirs it all up, stirs it again, and then, as an afterthought, adds more sugar, a little more milk. The liquid rises to the rim, and then by a fraction exceeds even the limit. Only it does not spill. It holds a bulge of coffee arching tragically over China, preserved by the physics of the surface tension, rhymed to some unspeakable magic. Though, as everyone knows, coffee miracles never last long. The morning wake-up call wobbles, splits, and then abruptly slips over the edge. Now the Nile of coffee wielding past glass and politics until there is nothing more than a brown dot on the morning paper. When Davison looks up, Karen is watching him. I called Tom, he tells her. She understands him well enough not to say anything. He knows I'm insane, he continues. And besides, he builds houses for a living. Did you talk to him? She carefully asks. I left a message. The next card simply reads Tom. Tom is Will Davison's fraternal twin brother. Neither one has said much to the other in over 8 years. Navy's successful, Tom's not. Karen explains in the film, that's funny. There's been a lot of resentment over the years. I guess it's always been there, except when they lived at home. I was different then. They kind of looked after each other more. 2 days later, Tom arrives. Karen greets him with a big hug and a high 8. He is an affable, overweight giant of a man who has an innate ability to amuse. The children immediately take him. They love his laugh, not to mention his McDonald's French fries. My own brother, who I haven't talked to in years, calls me up 4 in the morning and tells me he needs my tools. Go figure. That means your family, Karen says, happily leading the way to the Davison's study, where she has already set out clean towels and made up the hideaway. Fucking hell. There's another character piece going on here, but I'll read that in a minute, or do I take it down now? I don't know. Then there's another character piece over here. Well, there's lots of character pieces happening. Wait, hang on. It's an entire... Hang on. Hang on a second now, boy. Hang on. All right, well... That seems a little much. All right, let's... Right, she made up the hideaway for it. Usually when you want to level up your neighbor, you go... All right, hang on. Okay. We're going to take down this little character piece, and then we'll see where we're at. Easily, that whole bit of coffee arching tragically down to the morning paper could have been cut. You wouldn't have noticed the absence. I probably wouldn't have either, but that doesn't change the fact that I can't do it. Get rid of it, I mean. What's gained in economy doesn't really seem to make up for what you lose in Zamefo. The old man himself coming a little bit more into focus, especially where discretions like these are concerned. I can't tell why exactly, but more and more these days I'm struck by the fact that everything Zamboni had is really, really gone, including the bowl of betel nuts left in his mantle or the battered shotgun bearing the initials of RLB under his bed. Flaz appropriated that gaudy, the shotgun at the bed, or even the curiously preserved bud of the white rose hidden in the drawer of the nightstand. By now, his apartment has been scrubbed with Clorox, repainted, probably rented out to somebody else. His body's either molding in the ground or reduced to ash. Nothing else remains of him but this. So, you see, from my perspective, having to decide between Old Man Z and his story is the artificial, maybe even the dangerous choice. And one I'm obviously not comfortable making. The way I figure it... You're okay, you can go up there. I'm just recording myself reading. Oh, okay, cool. The perspective. So you see from the perspective, having to decide between Old Man Z and his story is the artificial, maybe even dangerous choice, and one I'm obviously not comfortable with making. The way I figured it, if there's something you'll find irksome, go ahead and skip it. I couldn't care less how you read any of this. His wandering passages are staying, along with all his oddly canted phrases, and even some warped bits in the plot. There's just too much at stake. It may be the wrong decision, but fuck it, it's mine. Zamboni himself probably would... Oh, Zamboni, that's a reference to Zamboni, the circus guy in Pinocchio. Potentially, maybe. Zamboni himself probably would have insisted on corrections and edits. He was his own harshest critic, but I've come to believe errors, especially written errors, are often the only markers left by a solidarity life. So sacrifice them is to lose the angles of personality, the riddle of soul. In this case, a very old soul, a very old riddle. Okay. I'm gonna call her good there, page 32, and then we will rip and roar for the rest of that. I'm gonna get out of here because there's a lot of people here, but tomorrow we're gonna pick this up and we're gonna start doing it on a daily basis, and if I can get myself on a Wi-Fi signal, I'm gonna do it live. Ideally, it would be at the same time every day, but we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out together, but tomorrow, and the reason I'm committing to doing it on a daily basis is because I love reading. I have one of my own story that I'm not going to bore you with right now. For right now, I'll just wish you a wonderful Sunday and thank you very much for watching this video. And I trust you enjoyed it. And we got there together and we did it together and I hope you enjoyed it. Wow.